Think you've seen every kind of horror a film can offer? Think again. Most people fear the monster in front of them, but seasoned viewers know the real terror often hides at the edges of the frame, a shadow that doesn't belong, a figure no actor remembers standing there, a shape that appears in the theatrical release but vanishes completely in the remastered version, as if someone quietly decided it should never be seen again. For decades, horror fans have paused, rewound, and dissected scenes that defy explanation. Cinematographers blame light leaks, editors swear it's dust on the print, directors deny filming anything unusual at all. Yet the unease remained. How do you explain an extra silhouette when the set had only 2 actors? How do you justify a face staring from the background when no one was behind the camera at that moment? And why do some of these anomalies appear only once captured on celluloid but erased in every later release? These moments aren't jump scares or clever tricks. They are accidents, glitches, intrusions, or something else entirely. They linger because they weren't meant to be there. They linger because someone or something slipped into the shot without permission. Tonight, we're venturing into that unsettling borderland where filmmaking loses control over its own image, into scenes that refuse to behave, into films where the scariest presence wasn't part of the script at all. Let's dive right into the darkness. Film has shown Don't Go to Sleep, 1982. Television films often slip quietly into obscurity, but Don't Go to Sleep carries a moment so unsettling that it has survived long after the movie itself faded from mainstream memory. During a late-night tracking shot, the camera glides across a dimly lit living room as a storm rumbles outside. The room is empty by design. The cast had already exited the scene. Yet, in a small patch of darkness near a doorway, the silhouette of a child appears to dart across the frame, low to the ground, and impossibly fast, as though moving with intention but without weight. The crew later denied filming anything of the sort. The set was cleared between takes, and no child actors were present during that sequence. The director suggested it might have been a shadow caused by lightning, but the timing doesn't align. The silhouette moves before the flash, not after. Fans who studied the anomaly note that the movement lacks the blur typical of motion at that speed, instead appearing crisp, almost sharply outlined for a single frozen instant. The anomaly exists only in the original broadcast recordings. Later cable reruns cropped the frame, and the DVD version trims the shot entirely, leaving the moment as a near-lost artifact passed around through aging VHS tapes and digital scans preserved by collectors. In a film centered on family tension and unseen emotional scars, the fleeting presence in the doorway feels like a truth. The movie didn't mean to show something running just beneath the edges of the narrative, too fast to question, yet too real to forget. Film #2 Terror in the Aisles, 1984. Despite being a documentary-style compilation of horror moments, Terror in the Aisles contains a mystery all its own. During one of the interlude shots inside the movie theater, the camera drifts across a sea of empty seats, illuminated only by the flicker of an unseen screen. The shot lingers for atmosphere, capturing the loneliness of a theater between showings. But in the back row, just left of center, a face appears pale, unfocused, barely catching the reflected light before vanishing as the camera passes. Because the film is composed of licensed clips stitched together, these theater shots were carefully controlled. Only the narrator, the camera operator, and a small lighting crew were present during filming. The seats were confirmed empty, no extras were hired. Yet the face appears on multiple TV rips, a blurry human-like shape leaning forward as though watching the montage unfold. The anomaly is puzzling because of the tight shooting conditions. The back rows remained in shadow, with no surfaces that could create false reflections, and the camera was rigged to eliminate oblique angles. When the Blu-ray remaster was released, the face became less noticeable but did not disappear entirely. It seems baked into the grain, captured on the original negative rather than added by later noise. Whether it's a production oversight or something more inexplicable, the presence lurking in the back row suggests that even a theater devoid of audiences can harbor someone waiting for the lights to go down again. Film #3 Ghost Keeper, 1981. Isolation is the true antagonist of Ghost Keeper. The film traps its characters inside a sprawling lodge swallowed by winter, where every sound feels stretched thin and every corridor seems longer than it should be. But among its atmosphere of creeping dread, one detail stands out as something the movie never intended to show. During a scene in a cramped maintenance room, 3 characters argue in front of a wall of old tools. The blocking is simple. 2 figures near the doorway, one pacing in the foreground. Yet when the pacing character crosses the room, A fourth figure appears briefly in the far corner, motionless, partially obscured by the hanging tools. The production budget was notoriously low, and the crew was small. No background actors were hired for the lodge interiors, and safety protocols ensured only essential personnel entered tight shooting spaces. Yet, the figure remains visible in multiple early VHS releases, tall, slender, and angled toward the cast as if silently observing. The anomaly doesn't shift or shadow the lighting in a way consistent with human presence. Instead, it blends unnaturally with the darkness, as if its edges don't quite adhere to the physical space. When the film was later digitized, the shadowy figure became harder to distinguish, blurred by compression and color correction. But collectors who keep original prints claim the moment is unmistakable, a brief intrusion that feels neither accidental nor crafted. In a story about unseen forces lurking inside an abandoned lodge, the silent spectator in the maintenance room feels disturbingly real, less a ghost imagined by the script and more a presence the camera revealed by mistake. FILM #4 The House Where Evil Dwells 1982. The House Where Evil Dwells trades in quiet dread, long takes, drifting camera movements, and the oppressive stillness of a home holding too many memories. But one moment, buried deep within a storm sequence, breaks that stillness with a detail so precise it resists every logical explanation. As lightning crackles and fog sweeps through the trees, the camera captures a slow pan across the mist. For less than a heartbeat, the faint outline of a human head forms within the fog, emerging as if pushed forward by the wind. The effect doesn't resemble typical pareidolia. It has structure, a defined brow, a jawline, even the impression of features tightening as though reacting to the storm. No practical effects team was scheduled for that night's shoot, and the fog was created using machines positioned several feet behind the visible frame. Crew logs confirm no one stood near the fog banks, both for safety and for maintaining continuity. Yet the head-shaped form appears clearly on multiple theatrical prints. Later home releases try to smooth the moment, but the shape persists, especially in uncompressed transfers. The anomaly doesn't dissolve like fog. It retracts, as if stepping backward into the darkness rather than drifting apart. The film's narrative speaks of lingering spirits, but this moment feels too raw, too unplanned to be thematic. Sometimes the natural world hides shapes we wish it didn't, and sometimes the camera captures them before the mind can look away. Film Cancelletto 5. Burnt Offerings 1976. Burnt Offerings is steeped in atmospheric decay, but one moment buried in its sprawling mansion remains one of the film's most perplexing anomalies. In a scene where the matriarch wanders through a dim hallway lined with ornate portraits, the camera tracks her movement with slow, steady precision. As she passes an antique mirror, the reflection briefly reveals a tall figure standing at the far end of the hall motionless, though no one is physically present in that direction. The shot was simple. One actor on set, controlled lighting, and a narrow corridor without space for hidden crew. Production notes confirm this. The mirror was an authentic antique prop, not a two-way gimmick or a composite effect. Yet, when the film was developed, the silhouette appeared consistently across theatrical prints. Its proportions resemble a man wearing a long coat, though this does not match any character or crew member listed for the scene. The anomaly becomes more disturbing upon closer examination. In the reflection, the hallway seems slightly longer than the physical space, as though expanded by the mirror's perspective. The standing figure appears anchored in that impossible extension, occupying a location that doesn't exist on the real set. When Burnt Offerings was remastered, the anomaly became softer, but never fully vanished. Some viewers argue it's a distortion caused by the antique glass. Others insist the shape is too defined, too intentional, to be dismissed as a trick of age. Its calm stillness contrasts sharply with the protagonist's rising anxiety, creating a moment where the camera appears to reveal a presence unaccounted for by anyone involved in production. Whether a visual accident or something stranger, the reflection remains one of the film's most enduring mysteries. Film #6 The Changeling 1980. Atmosphere is the beating heart of The Changeling, the hollow rooms, the winter light bleeding through old windows, the silence that feels too deliberate. But even within its carefully constructed unease, one moment stands out as a genuine anomaly. During a sequence in which the protagonist walks down a long corridor, the camera captures his shadow stretching across the wall. A second shadow follows, belonging to the cinematographer walking just behind him, but in a single, unmistakable frame, a third shadow appears slender, child-sized, and out of sync with the movements of the others. The production notes make no room for accidents. Only 2 people were positioned in that hallway, the actor and the camera operator. The lighting rig was minimal, designed to cast a clear, singular direction of shadow. Yet the third form emerges briefly, its head tilting as if observing from a lower height. Its appearance cannot be accounted for by set reflections, scattered light, or objects in the hall. It materializes, holds shape for a fraction of a second, then dissolves as the camera pans. The anomaly became a subject of debate when fans acquired 16mm TV prints that displayed the third shadow more clearly than later versions. Modern transfers obscure it, either due to color correction or subtle cropping. Regardless, the moment retains its power because it contradicts the physical logic of the scene. In a film built around the presence of an unseen child, this third shadow feels less like symbolism and more like the camera capturing something that moved before anyone else noticed. Film #7, The Entity, 1982. The Entity is infamous for its intensity, but one of its strangest images comes from a sequence that wasn't meant to be supernatural at all. During a laboratory test scene, the protagonist sits under bright clinical lights as researchers attempt to measure her experiences. The camera holds on her face, and for a brief moment, a diffuse glow forms behind her, shaped vaguely like a human outline leaning toward her shoulder. It isn't a lens flare, the angle is wrong. It isn't a lighting bounce, the source is too localized, and no crew member was positioned behind her during that take. The anomaly moved with her breathing, as if hovering just inches away. When paused, the shape seems to stretch toward her before collapsing back into the shadows. The production team dismissed it as an optical artifact, but the remastered Blu-ray complicates that theory. The glow weakens but retains its form, suggesting it was captured on set rather than created by later degradation. Researchers who've studied the film's visual effects insist the moment doesn't match any technique used in the movie. Enthusiasts argue it resembles another presence in the room, one that reacts only to her, an uninvited observer, rather than a narrative element. In a film where the terror often feels too close, the shape behind the protagonist turns the sterile lab into something unknowable, as if the camera recorded what the characters feared most, but were never meant to see. Film Dead and Buried, 1981. Dead and Buried thrives on atmosphere, fog-choked streets, dimly lit rooms, and a small coastal town hiding more secrets than people. But the film's most perplexing moment occurs not during one of its orchestrated scares, but in a quiet scene inside a shuttered storefront. A character walks past a glass display case, and in the reflection behind him, a shadowed figure appears to move. The motion is subtle, a shifting shape beyond the glass, as if someone is pacing in the darkness just outside the camera's field. The scene was shot in a sealed location. Only the principal actor and a 2-person crew were present. The storefront's windows had been blacked out to control the lighting, leaving no opportunities for passers-by or stray reflection. Yet when viewed carefully, the figure doesn't match the actor's movement or the camera operator's position. It moves independently, slower, heavier, and without clear form. Restoration teams have noted that the anomaly seems to exist on the original negative rather than being a later artifact. Some print transfers dull the reflection, but none erase it completely. The lack of an official explanation has turned the moment into a quiet legend among genre collectors, a presence embedded not in the story, but in the film itself. In a movie about things returning from the dead, the figure behind the glass feels like an echo of something the production never invited in. Film #9 Communion, 1989. There's a particular strangeness to Communion, a film already steeped in blurred memories and shifting perceptions. Its imagery feels unstable by design, but one moment in the cabin sequence stands apart from the movie's intended unease. As the protagonist steps away from the dinner table, the camera pans across a cluttered corner of the room. For a fraction of a second, the silhouette of a tall figure wearing what appears to be a brimmed hat stands in the shadows behind an open cabinet door. It doesn't move, it doesn't flicker. It simply occupies the darkness in a way no planned extra ever did. Crew reports offer no simple explanation. The production was small and meticulously choreographed. No background performers were hired for that scene, and the set was sealed during filming. Lighting design ruled out accidental shadows, and the director openly rejected the idea that any crew member could have slipped into position unnoticed. Yet the figure appears across multiple VHS releases, always in the same frame, always half-hidden. When the film was remastered, the anomaly softened but never fully disappeared. Some believe it's a trick of the grain. Others insist the shape has too much structure to be random. What unsettles viewers most is the stillness of it. the sense that the figure is waiting, watching, and entirely disconnected from the narrative. For a story about distorted encounters and unexplained presence, the man in the corner feels almost too perfect, as if the film captured something it wasn't meant to. Film Hasson Zero Ghost Story, 1981. Elegance defines much of Ghost Story, its atmosphere icy, deliberate, and graceful in the way it builds unease through silence rather than spectacle. Yet one particular scene disrupts that controlled artistry with a detail so out of place, it has baffled archivists for decades. As the camera sweeps past the facade of an old mansion, a figure appears at the second-floor window, framed by the frost-covered panes. It stands still, facing outward, neither waving nor reacting to the characters below. The script makes no mention of anyone occupying that room. Production testimonies complicate matters further. The location used for the mansion was empty, except for the crew operating on the ground floor. No lighting rigs were set upstairs, and the windows should have reflected nothing but the winter sky. Still, in several theatrical prints, the silhouette of a person is undeniably visible, broad-shouldered, unmoving, anchored in a place the film insists is vacant. By the time the movie reached DVD, the figure became less distinct. The Blu-ray release softened the glare on the window, making the shape ambiguous enough for skeptics to dismiss it as a misinterpreted shadow. But those who watched the film in its earliest days remember a different image, clearer, heavier, and disturbingly intentional. The haunting of Ghost Story was always meant to come from within its characters' pasts. Yet the presence in that window feels like an intrusion from outside the film entirely, something caught in the glass that was never meant to share the screen. Film Hashunon, The Appointment, 1981. For a film built on quiet dread and psychological unease, The Appointment contains one of the most disturbing background details ever captured on a controlled set. A father drives along a lonely road, tension rising through the soundtrack as wind funnels across the frame. The shot lingers on the back seat for a moment too long, following his uneasy glance in the rearview mirror. Nothing is supposed to be there, no actor was cast for the moment. Yet in certain early prints, the faint outline of a child's face appears behind the driver's shoulder, half-formed and watching. Reports from the crew only deepen the mystery. The production used a real vehicle, rigged for interior shots, and the back seat was empty during every take. Lighting was minimal and carefully directed to avoid reflections on the windows, meaning the apparition cannot easily be explained by stray shapes or misaligned gels. Even more unsettling is the way the face behaves. It doesn't flicker like a reflection, nor blur like a camera smear. It sits perfectly still, illuminated by a dim source that shouldn't exist inside the car. Later, restorations almost completely erase the shape. Some claim it fades because the original negative degraded. Others believe it was intentionally softened, an editorial decision made quietly and without acknowledgement. Regardless of the reason, the anomaly lingers in the memories of those who saw it. A silent passenger captured on celluloid once, and then nearly lost forever. In a film about unseen forces intruding upon ordinary life, this uninvited presence feels less like an accident and more like something that slipped through, unnoticed by everyone except the camera. Film Dive Blood Sabbath, 1972. Some films wear their age in soft colors and grainy textures, but Blood Sabbath hides something deeper within its uneven visuals. There is a moment in the forest sequence one often dismissed as a simple transitional shot where the camera follows a character past the edge of a gnarled tree trunk. The movement is slow, drifting, meant only to bridge scenes. Yet in the original 35mm reels, a pale arm seems to slip out from behind the bark, fingers stretching toward the frame before withdrawing as quickly as they appeared. No script notes mention an extra. No cast list includes a performer who might have been positioned behind that tree. The set was remote, lit only by portable lamps, and the blocking for the scene required no background movement at all. When questioned years later, the cinematographer insisted the angle was chosen specifically because nothing was behind that trunk. It was among the few places the crew could guarantee total darkness. The anomaly became stranger when the film reached home media. Early VHS releases show a blurred motion in the same spot, as if the image had been softened. The DVD transfer removes the shape entirely. Some collectors claim their theatrical bootlegs still show those reaching fingers, white against the shadow, almost eager to be seen. Whether it was an unrecorded extra, a trick of exposure on low-budget film stock, or something the restoration teams quietly chose not to preserve, the moment has become folklore among cult horror enthusiasts. In Blood Sabbath, The forest doesn't just surround the characters, it seems to watch them. Film Hasson 3, The Mediator, 1979. Cheap creature features often leave behind their share of production errors, but The Mediator hides something stranger than a boom mic or misplaced shadow. During a tense hallway sequence, the lead character moves through a shuttered theater, flashlight trembling as he calls out into the dark. The moment is simple, almost throwaway, until a shape darts across the background with a speed that shouldn't be physically possible. It doesn't run so much as glide, crossing from one end of the corridor to the other in a single, unnatural motion. Fans first noticed the anomaly decades after release, when the film resurfaced online. Frame-by-frame analysis shows the silhouette lacking depth, casting no shadow, and moving without environmental interaction. Crew members later stated that no extras were hired for the scene, and only 3 people were present in the building during the shoot. The director dismissed the figure as film damage, yet the anomaly remains consistent across multiple surviving prints, which essentially rules out random degradation. What makes the moment more disturbing is its timing. The camera operator changes angles mid-shot, and the figure appears at the precise frame between movements, as if slipping into the one moment the crew couldn't fully monitor. The lighting doesn't flicker, the sound doesn't shift. Nothing acknowledges the presence the protagonist never sees. Whether it was an unnoticed intruder, a technical aberration, or something far outside the film's modest intentions, the anomaly in The Mediator lingers long after the creature itself is forgotten. Some images refuse to stay in the shadows. Film Hasson 4, The Hearse, 1980. There's an eerie stillness that runs through The Hearse, a film already steeped in isolation and quiet dread. Most of its terror thrives in the slow-burn creaking floors, darkened hallways, headlights cutting through the fog. But one moment, buried in an otherwise unremarkable driving sequence, has become the film's most unsettling mystery. It happens when the protagonist passes by an abandoned house, glancing toward a window that should reflect nothing but darkness. Instead, a figure stands behind the glass, staring through her, as if aware of the camera itself. The production notes list no background actors for that scene. The house was locked, the interior unlit, and only the lead actress and a minimal crew were present on location. Yet when the film reached theaters, viewers began writing in about the man in the window. When freeze-framed, the shape appears solid shoulders, a head, a face angled downward, and it remains perfectly still, unaffected by the movement of the passing car or the shifting light. Years later, during home video transfers, the figure becomes harder to see. Some prints blur the window entirely, while others darken it just enough to make the shape ambiguous. The studio never addressed the anomaly, and no production member has claimed responsibility. If it were merely a lighting trick, the remastering shouldn't have erased it so cleanly. If it were a person, someone should remember. But The Hearse leaves the question hanging in its own quiet way. Sometimes the scariest person in the house is the one no one meant to put there. Film Hasson 5, The Boogeyman, 1980. There's a moment in The Boogeyman that even seasoned horror analysts struggle to explain. It happens so quickly most viewers never notice it on the first watch, but once you do, it becomes impossible to forget. The film follows a pair of siblings haunted by the violent echoes of their past, a supernatural imprint tied to a fractured mirror. But it isn't the ghostly premise that unsettles the most. It's a single reflection that has no rightful place on the screen. During a quiet sequence in the bedroom, the camera drifts past the mirror, a lingering shot meant to build anticipation rather than deliver a scare. Only 2 actors were present on set that day, and the blocking was simple. Yet in one specific theatrical print, a third face appears. It hovers behind the lead actress, motionless, undefined, and unmistakably human. The frame lasts less than a second, but it's unmistakable enough to prompt debates, rewatches, and decades of speculation. The director has repeatedly denied staging anything unusual. Crew members swear no one else was in the room, and the lighting setup leaves no obvious explanation for reflections, lens artifacts, or shadows. Stranger still, the face appears only in the original cut. Later, VHS and DVD releases either soften the frame or eliminate the anomaly entirely, as if someone intentionally smoothed over the moment. Was it a crew member accidentally caught on camera? A distortion in the film stock? Or something that slipped into the shot without ever being part of the production? The mirror in The Boogeyman reflects more than the character's trauma. It reflects a question no one has convincingly answered. Bonus film: The Sentinel, 1977. Before we wrap, Here's one more horror film you need to add to your list, one that carries a background detail so unnerving that even longtime analysts hesitate to explain it. The Sentinel is already a film brimming with uneasy silences and strange theological dread, but its most disturbing moment happens during a scene that technically should have been impossible. As the protagonist passes through a dim hallway of her apartment building, the camera tracks her movement while lingering for a moment on a doorway slightly ajar. Behind the narrow gap, a face watches her with an expression too blank, too motionless to feel fully human. The production reports insist this shot involved no background actors. The hallway was sealed off, lighting was set to eliminate reflections or unwanted silhouettes, and only 2 crew members were stationed behind the camera. Yet when the footage was reviewed, the face remained pale, grounded in the darkness, and perfectly aligned with the crack in the doorway. It does not blink, it does not lean, it simply exists, as though the building itself were staring back. The anomaly became even more perplexing once the film entered its restoration phase. Technicians attempting to clean the negative noted that the face did not behave like a shadow, nor like an underexposed figure. It held its shape across frames, refusing to dissolve under correction. Some prints dulled its clarity, but none erased it entirely. It is an image that seems anchored not to lighting or movement, but to the film stock itself. In a story already haunted by theological unease and the thin curtain between the living and the damned, the silent face behind the door feels like a moment the filmmakers never intended, an intrusion that transforms a routine shot into a warning. Whether it was a production oversight or something far stranger, it lingers long after the hallway empties. If you've made it this far, you already know that horror doesn't always hide in plot twists or scripted scares. Sometimes it slips into the frame when no one is looking. Which of these uninvited moments unsettled you the most? And do you think they were accidents, illusions, or something the filmmakers never managed to explain? If you enjoy exploring the shadows between frames, consider joining us for more.